Well, first off, welcoming everyone into our space here in the museum, welcoming you into the lecture series, and introducing you to the fantastic guests that we bring into the museum to share their knowledge and expertise with us as part of this lecture series. Now, the Lunchtime Discovery Series happens, well, most Wednesdays at noon here inside the Globe and on the museum's YouTube channel, but it is actually organized and coordinated by the folks in the Office of Environmental Education over in the Department of Environmental Quality. They work tirelessly to find amazing people who are doing really incredible work across science, nature, and the environment in North Carolina and sometimes beyond. Bring them into the space, get them online, and then we have the chance to every week learn something new. Now, I have to throw out there that I have to say some Wednesdays because today actually is the last installment of the Lunchtime Discovery Series for the season. I know, everybody's very sad, I can tell. But don't worry, we will of course be back. We're gonna take the summer off. So we're taking a summer break. Chris is gonna go just lounge on the beach. Every Wednesday at noon, you can find Chris lounging on the green roof of the museum. No, I'm kidding. We'll be doing all kinds of great stuff here at the museum, of course, but the Lunchtime Discovery Series will pick back up in the fall with another slate of fantastic people. So if you want to make sure that you stay plugged in for when this series comes back in the fall, head to the website eenorthcarolina.org. That's the website for the Office of Environmental Education. You can sign up for the email newsletter. That way you get the notifications, and you can be right back in here with us when the Lunchtime Discovery Series returns in the fall. Now, all month long for the month of May, we've been hearing from fantastic people who have been talking to us a lot about resiliency and what it means to plan for the future and to be ready for change. In North Carolina, you may know, and I think we're going to learn a lot about today too, agriculture is our #1 industry. So it's probably good to be thinking about it in terms of how the world around us is changing. And one of the people who works right up the street from us here at the museum is thinking a lot about this. It's Dr. Michelle Schroeder-Moreno. Dr. Michelle is the director for the Center for Environmental Farming Systems at North Carolina State University. And Dr. Michelle Schroeder-Moreno joins me now. Come on up. Let's give her a great big round of applause and welcome her to the stage.
Thank you, Chris. And good afternoon. It's wonderful to see you all and all up there and all online. Again, my name is Michelle Schroeder-Moreno, so I'm a faculty. I'm an agroecologist at NC State, and I'm the director of our Center for Environmental Farming Systems. So, because it's so long, we like to use acronyms, so just CEFS. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a roadmap today of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my path to agroecology and what it is, kind of a little bit of why we might need it. Why in agriculture are we starting to think about agroecology? And then I'll talk about kind of how we use agroecology in research, education, and outreach with the public at the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, and what we do and highlight some research from agriculture and production to across the whole food system in North Carolina. And then, if you are interested, from littles to bigs, we have a lot of career path opportunities and kind of what those are and how to get involved. There we go. So, like a lot of scientists, our paths aren't linear. It's not like when I was young, I woke up and I said I wanted to be an agroecologist. Why? Because that really didn't exist. And this is my 10-year-old self. I was a bit of a nerdy science kid. I'm wearing my favorite shirt. If you could see, there's little planets on it. And I liked animals and plants, and I was kind of good at science. And I was the first in my family to go to college, which was really meaningful. And because I liked science, I wasn't sure really what that meant. I grew up, this is a overview in Anaheim, California. That little blip of green is actually Disneyland. I grew up seeing the Matterhorn closest from my apartment. And so I wasn't thinking about agriculture. I didn't know, there was no agriculture around me, not a lot of green space either. In fact, my mom for many years was like, what do you do again? Because it was kind of the understanding, if you're good in science, then you're going to be a doctor. And that was my path. And I was fortunate to go to UC Irvine. Yes, that's an anteater. Our mascots are anteaters, Zot Zot. And so I was pre-med. I thought that was the main path. And what I realized is I could combine a lot of what I was kind of nerding out about, which was plants and how to grow them. My grandfather grew a lot of plants, even in our little patio in the backyard of the, or not backyard, but on the apartment veranda. And I had the opportunity, I think one of those light bulb moments that happens is I got to go abroad when I was an undergraduate student. And I went to Costa Rica. And I fell in love with this tropical rainforest kind of down on the bottom. It was like a beautiful sea of green, or a cathedral of green. But I realized when you walk out of the forest, there's also green, kind of the picture right next to it, but that is a lot of grass and not as productive, a lot of erosion. And so I started asking questions. Well, why can't you grow on that area? Why is the soil so low in nutrients, namely phosphorus? And then I was looking around in the forest, and everybody was excited about the animals, of course, the monkeys, the big snakes. We never saw big felines, but we'd see their scat. That was exciting. And everybody knew the names of the animals. Mostly everybody knew the names of the plants, and the plants were really exciting. But what I fell in love with was really the underdog of, the ecosystem, which was the amazing fungi. And you see this little scarlet cup fungi and a little, yeah, it's a cute frog in there too for my herp friends. But it was the fungi, where we didn't know the basic science, even the names of some of the species, much less what their functions were in the system. There were fungi that glowed in the dark, fungi that had medicinal properties that could be used or were used. And so I started asking questions. I had the opportunity to go back, and I studied in Mexico in DF, and I learned about soil health, soil fungi, and mycorrhizal fungi. So those little blue spaghetti-like items, those are corn roots stained blue, where I could see what's called mycorrhizal fungi, which is actually beneficial fungi. So ever since plants practically oozed on land about 420 million years ago, we could see mycorrhizal fungi. And they help plants get nutrients. And so I started to work with farmers. One of the big shifts for me, and I went to graduate school at the University of Miami to study tropical ecology and evolutionary biology, was the only person in my group that wanted to work with farms and wanted to work with farmers, because I really believed I wanted to do science that mattered. And I knew that these fungi could be useful in agriculture. We could reduce fertilizer use, which is a win-win environmentally and economically for producers. And so that path really kind of led me to NC State, and I was an ecologist, worked in the tropics, and I was hired by a crop and soil science department. I was a little bit like, are you sure? I've been very honest about what I do. But I was hired to teach and develop a new agroecology program, which was exciting because that's exactly what I wanted to study, which is really the combination, kind of get to of ecology in agriculture. So I've been at NC State for about 21 years, and I developed our major program, Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems, many courses, including a study abroad course, as well as a student farm, the Agroecology Education Farm, right about 10, 15 minutes from NC State campus. Why? Because I could talk to you until I'm blue in the face about agriculture, but I think you really learn when you see it and have your hands on it. And that farm is not just for students, it's for surrounding community as well. So I've been an ecologist in sustainable agriculture. I work with these tiny little soil root fungi, or arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, in tropical systems, but here in North Carolina. One of the crops I worked with for many years is strawberries. Who likes strawberries? Yes. We have a lot of sustainability challenges with strawberries. They're a big sugary fruit right next to the ground, which means fungi, bacteria, all kinds of things can attack them. And we do use a lot of fungicides and fumigants in strawberries. So on the EPA kind of top 10, top 12 challenging crops. And so what we were interested in is how we get producers to do more sustainable soil practices, whether it be reducing fumigation or eliminating it, adding compost, vermicompost, and of course mycorrhizal fungi, and those good soil health practices. Because everything we eat begins with the soil. Everything we wear that we put on begins with the soil. So I've done a lot in North Carolina working at NC State, which is our land-grant institution. I serve North Carolina and North Carolina farmers, but I've also tried to fit in, you know, my love and passion in working internationally. So I was a Fulbright scholar in Croatia, but I worked a lot in Central America and various countries in Central America, a little bit of South America. I taught study abroad for a number of years because for me, that was my light bulb, and I wanted other students and individuals to be able to experience that too. And so I always say this, and I think it's important from the beginning to start with your why. I've been kind of getting there, but it's not who you are and what you do. It starts with why you do things. For me, being a first-generation college student, education is empowerment. We not only change and better ourselves, our family, and our community around us, and it should have an equal access. It shouldn't matter where you are on your zip code. Sustainability in agriculture can do a lot of things. Agriculture is not always negative. It can conserve diversity. It can conserve resources as well as the land. And we have to change the way we think about it, which starts with changing the practices. We're all involved in agriculture. How many of you think you're involved in agriculture? You eat 3 times a day. You're voting with your dollar, and for one practice or one kind of product or another. And I do believe food security is fundamental to all. It's really hard to learn and better yourself if you have an empty stomach. And so that is something we need to address as a nation and as it starts in our community. So this is the big billion-trillion-dollar question we all need to be asking. How can we sustainably provide food for an increasing population? We know our population is increasing in North Carolina, bless you, in the nation, internationally. And yet we have these challenges, food insecurity, and we don't want to produce in a way that degrades the environment and reduces our ability to produce in the future. This is the big question. This is what drives me. So let's look at that a little bit. I'm going to break it down and kind of tell you a little bit of the why of agroecology. Everything we do with food production starts in the soil. And this is a map of the world, and the colors represent kind of our human-induced soil degradation. Soil degradation means that we're degrading or reducing the ability of the soil to function, and not just for producing agriculture, but function for the biodiversity that's housed in the soil, the plants and the diversity of plants and communities above ground. Where it is redder is areas of problematic. So it may be reduced or eliminated function even for us to be able to grow on that. And how do we do this? Sometimes we're growing in areas, this is human-induced, that is very naturally susceptible to erosion. That means we're growing in very kind of soils that may be a little bit more sandy or that easily could be lost. You could think about sloped areas too, where maybe we shouldn't be doing agriculture or some types of agriculture. We also can do that. I'm from California out west, where some of our irrigation and fertilizer practices have increased salinization, and that just means salts on the top of the soil, and that reduces our ability for crops to grow, and of course pesticide and some of the other uses. So I'm going to show some graphs. I won't lose you here because I'll talk you through it. So you're seeing a graph with a couple different colors there. The white is increasing food production, and a relatively per person. So we've been increasing food production over time, and advances in agriculture, crop varieties, more knowledge of when to grow, how to grow, machinery in some cases, and we are increasing population at the same time. Yet that bottom line where I have the big arrow pointing at is food insecurity. And food insecurity has actually been increasing, especially during COVID. This doesn't capture all of COVID. And it's actually, this is a big average, but it's increasing disproportionately. So in some groups, it's affecting more than others. Those that don't have access or availability, especially to food. And yet, we ask this, the literature will tell us a few more things. The world actually produces enough calories for every person on Earth, and more than enough. Now, I said calories, what's in those calories matter. You know, is it a balanced diet and nutritional diet? So we can produce. So this kind of gets to your question. Perhaps you're wondering, why is there food insecurity? It's not just about production. And it could be how we're producing. And it's not to say that we don't need to address this increasing population and produce more, but it's a complex issue. There we go. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the goal of agriculture? Because all the practices and all of our policies come out of that goal. Well, it's to produce food for our community, for our state, our nation. So production has to be part of it. Is it more about making money, profit? If these are the only things, as well as we just want a lot of cheap food, you can see kind of what the thought process and what the practices are around that. It could be production at any cost. And that is a lot of what we're doing in this country. There are reasons why our current agricultural system is unsustainable. This is not controversial. I work with a lot of agronomists, and we know in parts of the world and parts of this country, even in North Carolina, we have soil degradation problems, depletion of water resources, especially those aquifers. You could think out west and in the central part of the country. Various types of environmental pollution, whether that be in soils, contaminated water, and this is from agricultural practices, or even air. We have a loss of genetic diversity of the fruits, vegetables, crops, animals, livestock. What you see in the grocery store is not the high diversity that actually exists on this earth. I got to spend some wonderful time in Mexico where I can't even count the number of corn varieties. There's a special variety for producing tortillas, pozole, for this, kind of environmental condition, but yet we only see a very few in the marketplace. And we're losing some of this. What's ironic for crop diversity and animal diversity, especially in agriculture and domesticated, is if we don't grow it, we can lose it. And as fossil fuel dependency in our agricultural system, as well as I mentioned, increasing food insecurity that affects Thank you. Okay, little pause. There's a dramatic pause on this. There we go. So this kind of gets to why we might be needing something new in the way we think about agriculture and food systems, and why we've gotten to agroecology, which is a idea in a nutshell is the science behind sustainable agriculture, and it's producing in a way simultaneously that's ecological, economical, and social. So economics is always the bottom line in agriculture for a farmer to be able to succeed, for us as community to purchase food, but we're also thinking about the environmental resources and not degrading them, as well as not just the farmers and farm workers, social health, but also what we're producing and the impact of that socially on the community. So agroecology is actually blending two different things. It's blending both ecology, the study of ecology, backward too. backward 2. Thank you. One more. Thank you.
One more.
One more. Thank you. So it's combining agronomy and ecology. And agronomy, as I kind of depicted up here, it's the activity of humans to control plants and animals. And I have that big arrow because it's about putting inputs. Some of it is our human knowledge and technology, but it's also resources, inputs, and we value the product that's coming out, the food, the fiber. Ecology, that study is very different, and it's about understanding how organisms interact with each other as well as their environment. I drew this squiggly line because it's understanding population dynamics. It's understanding how things are functioning over time. Process, connectedness, and long-term is valued. All organisms are valued in ecology. So you could think about how in the world can you combine these disciplines? But you can, and there's real value in taking the perspective from ecology, the connectedness, how organisms are interacting, and apply them at the farm level or even at the food system level. It takes multidisciplinary thinking. And thank you. And systems level thinking. That means that we're not just combining ecology and agronomy, but also kind of things that we know about plant physiology, animal physiology, plant pathology, weed ecology, as well as the social and cultural and economic conditions of that place. It's not alone to pick out one thing, one of the corn, and ask, how am I going to increase that corn yield by just applying nitrogen? An agroecology mindset is thinking about what kind of nitrogen am I applying? What is the effects on the corn downstream? How much does it cost? What is the effect on the weeds the next season or seasons after that? And what is the effect on humans for the amount or type of nitrogen that I'm applying? So you can see it's a bit different. And it has evolved over time, and it evolves in space. So in places that I've worked with, especially in Central America, it's not just the suite of practices, sustainable practices, but it's also a political movement. It's about food sovereignty. It's about land access. Who says what are the practices? Now, agroecology as well as sustainable agriculture, you will not see a suite of practices that says this farmer is certified. It's not like organic production in that way, because what is contextual in space matters. So what might be sustainable practices in Costa Rica for a coffee farm is going to be very different than a wine production, let's say, in California. But there are some things that we know and follow. It's dynamic. That means it's changing over time. Agroecology, it's involving people, participatory, involving farmers. Farmers are the base of knowledge that know their challenges as well as likely the solutions to those challenges. It's transformative, especially as we're thinking about how we purchase locally and that money goes back into our own community and back to own farmers. It's called a circular economy. So it has these different aspects to it. And one that Chris said early on was about resiliency. One of the main things in ecology we think about is diversity of organisms in an ecosystem leads to more resiliency. Resiliency is the ability for an ecosystem to withstand disturbances. Disturbances like fire, it could be a pest, and they might vary over time and in frequency. Well, the same thing happens in agriculture. We have all those natural disturbances, but we also have market disturbances. We have social, cultural, political disturbances as well. And it doesn't mean it stays the same, but we're still able to produce. And diversity is at the heart of that. So diverse production in space and time is one of the keys of sustainable agriculture practices and agroecology. And we know that there's many benefits of agroecology, can be sometimes increasing yields and the diversity of crops. And especially if those are getting eaten by the household, as well as we talked about economics and keeping farmers farming as well. And so we get back to that question, that big question, and that drives us. And this is the question that drives us in the Center for Environmental Farming Systems. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, we are 3 partners: NC State, NCA&T, are 2 land grant institutions, which means we not only do research and extension, but we also, or research and education, we also do extension or community outreach, and the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. And so 3 partners means that we serve all farmers in North Carolina, and our mission drives all of our work. And I really say our special sauce is how we integrate research, education, and outreach or extension. And we focus on North Carolina, and we're thinking about those 3 parts of sustainability: the environment or resources and conserving those. It's also about social, so health outcomes, as well as economics. And we do sustainable agriculture and food system research, education, and outreach. And the way I describe us is we're both a place and a network of programs. We have over 60 faculty and staff from NCA&T and NC State that work together. We have one of the largest stations for research, the Cherry Farm, focused in Goldsboro, North Carolina, out east. Over 2,000 acres dedicated to sustainable agriculture research. And they're broken up in these 6 kind of units. We have long-term farming systems that allows us to look at climate impacts going into its 25th year of comparing organic, conventional, forestry, and then also a control or succession. We have pasture-based beef, pasture-based dairy, because sustainable agriculture doesn't happen without animals. Animals are part of agriculture, and how we can manage them to improve animal welfare and improve yields and integrate them into systems is very important. We have a small farm unit, mostly focused for NCA&T efforts, and it's your fruits and vegetables, all that you normally eat. It has organic and non-organic spaces, so we can do research and compare those. Organic research unit is focused on organic grains like things like corn and soybean. You might be thinking, why grow corn and soybean organically? Well, that feeds animals. If you like organic milk, they eat a ration of certified organic grains or our certified organic pastures. We also have our new unit, agroforestry, which is an old type of practice, especially throughout the world, especially in tropical areas of the world, and we can do this here in North Carolina, integrating now 3 things on the land. So trees, long-term carbon storage, and used for, loblolly pines, so usually pulp, pasture or forage, and animals. And that's a win-win for producers. And what we say we're doing is really farming for the future. The future in North Carolina, we need farming to continue. It is our number 1 industry, but we know things are changing. What is changing? We have less land available, or land is becoming more expensive, and we have had a number of different climate change impacts, either from every year droughts more and more frequently, more and more frequent 100 and 500 year hurricanes out on the coast, and certainly what we saw in the fall with the Hurricane Helene hitting western North Carolina. And so we're trying to examine how do we adopt new practices for farmers? How do we research these for these changing conditions, as well as for the economic condition in serving our North Carolina communities? One of the things we look at a lot, many researchers are focused on, is climate impacts and soil health. We have sustainable agriculture, agroecology is not without technology. So we have installed automated robots out in some of our fields to measure nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is one of the biggest greenhouse contributors. When we talk about climate change, you might be thinking about carbon. How do I measure carbon? And that, for many ecosystems, is very important. But for agriculture, we're missing a big part of the picture if we do not look at nitrogen. Nitrogen, unfortunately, is one of the things that can be most added in most of our agricultural systems and the thing that's most lost and can contribute to environmental impacts. So that is something we're monitoring. And this is some of our technology in the field. It might not look that fancy, but kind of every minute or so, kind of the arm goes off, caps on the ground, and measures the amount of nitrous oxides coming off these different systems. So we can compare organic, conventional, and other systems. We have a number of soil scientists on our team as well. And again, I mentioned our pasture-based livestock. How do we look at climate change impacts with livestock and soil health? These are animals that are on kind of forage systems. This is not a conventional practice in most of our systems in North Carolina. And so these animals are moving around, and there's improved animal welfare. There can be challenges if anybody has experienced the summer in North Carolina, and these have black coats. These are Angus cattle. They can heat up, just like you and I would heat up out there. And so we have some integrated projects, of course, under trees with the agroforestry. We also have a whole project. It's not enough to help farmers with different pasture-based practices, but we have to look at where the animals are processed as well as the markets. And so our NC Choices program works across the whole food system or whole food supply chain with local niche meats ending up here in North Carolina. And a lot of what we do is also in food systems. And our food system work spans across North Carolina. Let's see if I could go back one. There we go. Our food system work, we do a variety of programs. Each of them have their own little logos. But in essence, we do a lot of local to programs. How do we get local food in schools? Our Farm to School program. We work with the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, our partner. Farm to Early Child Care and Education, starting with the littles. Where does your first kind of impact of nutrition happen? And your taste, when you think about what you remember about some of that, memories of food, it starts 5 or under, and we want to start very young with that. We also work with seniors, farm to senior services. Sometimes we don't think about seniors and food insecurity, but that is a huge issue in many areas where seniors are having to choose housing and medicine over local foods. And NC Choices as well. We work collaboratively with Cooperative Extension. You might not know Cooperative Extension, but we're here in North Carolina. So these are NC State or NCA&T employees in every one of our 100 counties, as well as in the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, where there's an office, and it helps not only farmers with that research, but it also helps community. And we do a lot of family and consumer sciences work as well. And here in North Carolina, Local Foods is our flagship program with Extension. That means in every one of those 100 offices, there's a local foods agent, and that started with CEFS. And we also have 2 groups that work under CEFS. One is the Community Food Strategies. This is really a network of different community partners that help Food Policy Council start in our counties, and that's where real change happens. Community members asking, what are the challenges in my community? How do I work with city council? How do I change things in my own community? And we have a network of those across North Carolina. Our Committee on Race and Equity looks at race and equity issues in the food system through education. And I'll just end with education, that is how we create future food system leaders. Working in agriculture, again, I didn't come from agriculture, and I feel blessed to be part of it, to change our own food system. We all have the capacity to do that. One path might be farming, but that is one of many paths in our food system. And we provide a diversity of opportunities, internship programs, of course at NC State, doing research, or internships with our community, with cooperative extension and community partners. We also fund graduate students doing research in sustainable agriculture, and we have beginning farmer training programs. Because believe it or not, we need to grow new farmers. I know it might not be apparent, but in North Carolina, we are number, I think, 2 or 3 in the amount of farm loss nationwide. A lot of folks want to come to North Carolina, and that's wonderful, but it's very difficult for it to keep farms. Our average age of farmers is close to 58. That means average. That means there's older farmers than that still farming. So we desperately need to grow new farmers. And new farmers, especially if it's someone like me that hasn't had a background of farming, can be, it's not just a summer program. It needs to go from seed to really to production to market. There we go. We have a major program for a diversity of students and an agroecology education farm at NC State. And then we also have an apprentice program, beginning farmer training program, and it is registered in North Carolina. We have a sustainable vegetable production because a lot of new farmers, they are making money producing more high quality vegetables and selling those local. We also have one called Boots on the Ground, and that is something we're really proud of that's working with veterans. The number 1 and number 2 industry in close succession in North Carolina is number 1, agriculture, number 2, military. And we have many military members that have served their country and want to come back and serve their community. And so we have a veteran mentoring program within CEFS as well. And this is more of a 12 or 18-month program. And all of our education programs are paid. And it's a very important value that we have. While you're learning, we do not want to limit it based on economic means. And we have in our veteran program, just I think entering year 2, we have 11 military veterans with participants from all 5 branches of the military, which we're really excited about. And some of them have already gone on and purchased a farm. So I'll end with this. We need to ask each one of ourselves, what is our vision for our own food system? What do we want it to look like? Because it is up to us to change it. What do we want to see in the store? Do I want to know my producer? We want to produce food that is healthy food, that promotes healthy people and healthy communities. We want farmers to have access to land, and all farmers need to be at the table, from your traditional corn and soybean and livestock producers to now younger folks or newer folks that are producing vegetables. Everyone needs to be at the table when we talk about sustainability. But it involves you and it involves me in deciding what that looks like. And I'll just end with this, is you can get involved in many ways with CEFS. We have a variety of opportunities. I mentioned apprenticeship, beginning farmer, our internship program for students. We often hire folks as well, food councils in your own communities. Also, of course, listservs or volunteer. We have a real big event coming up, a Farm to Fork. It's celebrating some of our amazing chefs in the Triangle, paired with some of our local producers. And that happens just in a few weeks on June 8th. And tickets are still available. And I put a link of all the amazing ways that you can be involved. And I just want to thank everybody for your time.
Let's give Michelle one great big round of applause. Thank you very much. Excellent stuff. Love hearing about the work that's happening in North Carolina to make the world a better place and to make good food. I like good food. If you're here with me inside the globe and you've got questions you'd like to ask, just wave at me. I'll bring you a microphone. If you're up on the balconies and you've got something you want to know more about, just wave down at me. That way I know you've got a question. We'll call on you, and then you can yell at us, and we'll repeat the questions into the microphone so that everybody can hear. And of course, if you're watching online, go ahead and type your questions into the chat. I have that pulled up, and I'll be able to share your questions into the program as well so that everybody who's participating gets to learn more. I think maybe to get us started, I'm curious about what you find your biggest challenges to be.
In agriculture, or just me personally?
I'm as the director of CEFS. Yeah, like what's the thing that makes the job the most interesting? Let's take that tack.
I like that one. The most interesting is the amazing people that we work with and the diversity of perspectives they bring to the food system. I kind of mentioned, not being from agriculture. I think one of the keys when we think about the complex issues in our food system, food insecurity or, different production practices, they're going to take a new way of thinking about it and like turning that problem over. It's complex and it takes multiple expertise and disciplines. And I think the way we work together, our teams, is very collaborative and multidisciplinary. So we're able to kind of tackle some of those big things and in new ways. And I think maybe being, I taught in agroecology for many years. I think the most exciting thing is, having a student really that light bulb go off. I've had many times that the agroecology course for a student was the first agriculture course they ever took, and maybe the last, to be honest. But that formed a new path for them, and they see themselves kind of either continuing this, working in the food system, because we need more people, and whether that be, from ecology, sociology, to be able to address these kind of big, critical, sticky issues in our food system. We need more people focused on it, not just producing, that's one thing, but really trying to address these big issues. So I get excited about that kind of new people in the field, different perspectives, and then these great, innovative ideas.
What do you feel like have been some of the biggest changes in agriculture because of new and growing interest in agroecology?
So, and I'm going to talk across the food system, and I'm going to talk specifically here in North Carolina. I think the way we've adapted and in local foods. So when I think about what I see in North Carolina happening, we have many farmers markets. We have 3 state farmers markets and many much smaller local farmers markets in different communities in rural and urban areas. And most of us still go to the grocery store, and that's where we get most of our food. But in the last, I would say, 15, 20 years, every major grocery store chain has had not just organic, but local North Carolina products. And it's because of all people asking and demanding for that. And those produce managers and those grocery stores have their finger on the pulse of what a consumer wants. And all you have to do is ask. From that, we have a wide range of diversity of now farmers coming together in collaboratives, in food hubs, kind of where they can have shared cold storage. It's really expensive for an individual producer to have, a big freezer or a big walk-in refrigerator to do some of the processing. And so we have these food hubs that are gathering all the local produce and also able to sell it in larger ways to those grocery stores, to those schools, to those childcare centers, institutions, universities. And that's something that in North Carolina, we have it in other states, but it is in spades in North Carolina. And they're working hand in hand. And when we talk about resiliency in the food system, when you have local production, processing, money going back into the economy, those food hubs able to especially gather shared resources for farmers and maybe value-added pricing as well, then it's a win-win for producers. That is something we've seen grow in North Carolina that is unique. The local food program, I think, goes hand in hand as well. And the job opportunities. People are coming to North Carolina for sustainable agriculture and local foods, more than I would say in a lot of other states. Local processing, I know we don't want to usually talk about the animal part of things, but we have the previous governor invested a lot in local and independent processors. A lot we learned from the pandemic. We learned about what happens with food when you don't have that supply chain working. The first thing we didn't see in the marketplace was meat. And there's a lot of reasons why, but mostly it comes down to when you're processing or in butcheries and that close contact for COVID really shut down. But when you have local processors able to adapt and local producers and consumers that want it, some of our team did bulk meats and online. Bulk meats means less cutting, less labor, and online could be less contact and a farmer still able to sell, consumers are still able to get it. So those local systems are a lot more resilient, and we're going to be seeing that a lot more in the future. That's what excites me.
Hi, thank you for your time. I had a question. I'm not quite sure how to ask it, so I'm just going to ask and then you interpret it however you would like. But I'm wondering about the different sources of revenue that you have for all these different programs. You list all these different jobs and internships, and where are you getting the money to do all these things?
Everywhere. That's a very good question. So the question was, how, as a center and organization, how do we do all this financially? And just like we promote diversity in crops and markets, we promote diversity in fundraising too. A lot of it is grant supported. A lot of it is getting impacted by the grant situation we're in and the pausing. But we also have foundation support for some of our work, local North Carolina foundations that include health organizations, Dogwood Foundation, Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation, because they also, I think it's being able to communicate how your food system can impact healthy communities as well and making those connections. Universities also provide support, and we have 2 endowments generously from the Kellogg Foundation and Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation. We do fundraising. It's our Farm to Fork picnic is a fundraiser, and we work with also community organizations. Everything we do is in collaboration, and I don't feel we can do anything alone. So working together with some of the other farming organizations or health organizations is kind of how we do things.
So online, David wants to know how many students take classes in your program and graduate from your program.
That's a great question, and I admit I'm no longer the agroecology professor, now taking on a more administrative role. The major, just to back up a little bit, the major was started in 2018. We had our first entry in freshmen, I believe in 2020. So it's still a little bit young, and certainly starting near or about COVID is not great. I think it is cross-departmental with Department of Crop and Soil Science and Department of Horticulture at NC State. And so total from both departments, and again, this is dated a couple years when I was back in the position, is about 40, 45. And I'm not sure how many graduated this year. It's probably 5 or to 10, I think, each. And so a next question that might happen is, well, what are they going on to do? That's always the big question. I'm a parent with a student in college, so that's what I want to know. And what's amazing is quite a diversity of things. We have some going on into, I would say, some of our ag tech companies, not so far here in RTP and plant breeding and other things, working with, biological inoculants and doing some of that research, going on into graduate school and either NC State or other universities. Some are working for some of our partner organizations like farmer organizations. Some are working in cooperative extension, soil and water conservation. A few are farming, and some are at other universities teaching agroecology now too.
Fantastic stuff. The next one, are most new farmers inheriting the business from their families, or are they completely new to farming?
In our programs, and is new to farming. They are not, and that is a hard step. It is a much easier path to inherit land from family. The biggest challenge a new farmer, new to farming, has is not only do they not have land, which is the biggest, bottleneck, I would say, but also access to capital for the equipment, labor, and all the other needs. And that's a big hurdle to overcome, as well as the knowledge to gain. So I can't say for the stats in North Carolina or nationwide what those new farmers are, but we do have all of the folks in our program are new to agriculture. And we do have a lot of young people, and not just young people, that are interested, even second career, coming into agriculture without any agricultural background. But again, that hurdle of access to land is the biggest thing we need to address in North Carolina.
I'm like, how do
So-
you do that? Is
Yeah.
it finding sources of funding for them, loan programs?
I think it's a it's not going to be a one hammer approach. And so we do have we have a number of organizations that work with land conservation, so Triangle Land Conservancy. We also have ones that help with agricultural easements, and what that means is keeping land in agriculture, just how we do an easement for a natural system. It could be an agricultural system, and it's not forever. So, farmers don't need to think it's forever. It could be 15 years or 20 years or even 10 years, and that reduces the tax amount, so there is a benefit for producers. There's a whole nother program is, I told you we have an aging out of producers. Some of those producers either don't have children or don't have children that want to farm, and they want to keep that land in farming. And so we have an NC Farm Link program at NC State that is linking older farmers with newer farmers that want to start farming. And it's just like, I would say, almost like dating to marriage a little bit, and you're getting to know each other, getting to know the land, and maybe sometimes there might be access to equipment. And then it is becomes legally binding, after a point, a lease or a long-term lease and such. There are some great groups doing some amazing things, and I have to point out Triangle Land Conservancy here and around the Triangle. There is, and together with our park system, have combined park system, access to green space, some of those being old farms, and turning them into either small plots that farmers could kind of incubate and start farming. And some of them aren't so small as well. The Williamson Preserve and even also Good Hope Farm in Morrisville are some examples of that, where you have this kind of innovative idea of green space that would normally be a soccer field. Well, it could be kind of a farming space as well. That's where the innovation and new ideas have to come from.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about food policy councils.
Mhm.
And so when we think about diversifying funds and we think about resilient systems, I'm definitely thinking more regionally and how do we address problems? And I think food policy councils is a great area to access those questions and solutions. And so what my question is, how do we normalize the collaboration and relationship between local governments and food policy councils? Because I see that as a gap that could be bridged to make it local governments have it that higher priority on their list of like, this is how we want to invest in our communities.
I think that's a great question. I think it starts with involving them. So, and it usually at the county level, or in some of our rural areas that are a little bit smaller, it could be cross-county, is involving the city council members on the food policy council. That's where the education and advocacy has to start. I don't think operating alone and then demanding change, you have to involve them. And I think these are all people that live in the community and all want their community to do well. And so it's part of that education part. Here's the challenges. How do we see our future? And it's also talking across food policy councils to learn what has worked well. So we do have a network. That's why a network of food policy councils. And we have a state local food policy council where kind of that is raised. And then while it's not an official advisory council to the legislature, it was, but I think that has really helped raise kind of those grassroots issues all the way to the top. But you have to involve people. And I think more communication. It's a little bit challenging for us as state employees. We can't quite march down to the state legislature. We do partner with those that can.
Thank you.
Time for a couple more for you. We've got one. What's the link between organic farming and agroecosystems? How do they relate?
So organic farming, and I'll just mention in the United States, we have an organic certification, and it is a suite of practices mostly focused on environmental concerns. So it doesn't address the social, doesn't address the economic. Part of the economic, maybe usually organic products are about double in price, but not everybody has access to them. So not all organic is sustainable, let me just say that. But it does have a lot of practices. The practices for organic certification are a diverse crop rotation, must use cover crops, no synthetic fertilizers, no synthetic pesticides, no sewage sludge, no GMO crops. And a person would come out, it's regulated by the USDA, a certifier would come out at least one time to the farm during the production, as well as there's kind of a lot of record keeping. It is the same, more or less, those standard practices, North Carolina, Georgia, Seattle, wherever. And there's a lot of practices in there, like for example, how we manage the soil, diversity, crop diversity, and cover crops that are also sustainable. And so when we talk about taking a agroecology approach to an agroecosystem or to a farm landscape, the part that's missing with organic is incorporating the social as well as the economic. And it's not just selling things at a higher price, but how do we ensure access and availability of things? So it's taking a much larger food system approach. And what's hard, because it involves the social, cultural, economic, and the place that it is, there's not going to be a suite of practices that are deems a farmer sustainable. We have a path towards sustainability. I think it's always fair to say, I would never call a farmer or any landscape sustainable. How do we know it is? We have to come back. It has an aspect of time to sustain, but we know we're going towards a path, and we can look at indicators like soil health. How long has that farm been in persistence or generations? What does some of the economics look like over time as well?
Excellent stuff. The last one that I'll put to you today from our chat, a couple of questions came in on this theme. How can consumers, especially urban and suburban folks, support sustainable agriculture?
That's a great question. Is one, get out and vote with your dollars and buy local, and then ask questions. For the most part, you're gonna find local and be able to interact with farmers at the many farmers markets that we have in North Carolina. Here, one of our biggest farmers markets is the state farmers market, but there's many others, and finding out and talking to producers. Tell me how you raise this. Tell me how you produce this. And you'll get a lot of input there. In North Carolina and here in this area, in the Piedmont, every spring, every fall, our Carolina Farm Stewardship Association has a farm tour. You can go out and visit all the local farms and see for yourself, get to know the farmer. So participating in those kind of organizations, and you can become a member of Carolina Farm Stewardship as a consumer. So I think buying local, talking to producers, getting to know, the farmers in your area. And then the last way I'd say is try a hand at it yourself. Even if you're not able to produce that one tomato, you'll have a greater appreciation for that tomato that you buy in the marketplace and how much energy, water, and labor it took.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for coming out today. Thanks for sharing all of that information with us. Great stuff happening over there at NC State all the time, but very exciting to hear about what's going on at CEFS.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to everyone here and online. It was a pleasure.
And if you weren't hungry, you are now, because we just spent the last hour talking about food. Thanks, everybody, for coming out, for participating in the Lunchtime Discovery Series today. We'll be back here again in September is the plan right now. So no Lunchtime Discovery Series again for June, July, or August, but make sure you're following the museum and the Office of Environmental Education on social media. Check out our websites for calendars of events, because we're gonna keep doing fun and interesting stuff that you're gonna wanna be a part of. But for this lecture series specifically, make sure that you're signed up for the email newsletter that the Office of Environmental Education. That way you know when we're back and you can come and join us again real soon. Everybody have a great summer, and I'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.